welcome to the rollout. I'm Lindsay Rousseau.
And I'm Genevieve Marie. Hello and welcome.
And we're in the same room.
We're actually in the same room.
I know. This is not movie magic. We are like,
we're here. We can touch hands
and things
and talk to each other.
Well, the candles look great, so I'm not going to touch them, but I could if I wanted to.
We have a set. So we started our little channel during COVID.
We did.
And so this is the first time that we're actually like in a room together.
So excited. Well, we finally have space to be able to record too.
Also, yes.
So we have a space, and it's a very lovely space too. So, but we are progressing and growing. And of course, we thank you guys for watching our content and seeming to enjoy what we're putting out there. So
yeah,
we're back with another episode. I know we just covered She-Hulk, but you guys seem to really like that video that we did about She-Hulk, and we just had the season finale.
Yeah.
So we felt like the season finale warranted another episode.
Well, it was so different.
It was different than anything Marvel has ever done. And honestly, anything that like anyone has done that I've seen. I mean, they went beyond breaking the fourth wall. I
definitely think they took a big risk with it, and I'm wondering how much they had planned of it in the nascent stages, and how it evolved, and what they chose to do, between the edits of the script and like first draft, second draft, was this always a thing that they were going to do, or did they look at their first draft and they're like, this is really hokey. We got to change up some things.
So obviously, spoilers ahead. If you have not seen the season finale of She-Hulk, please stop watching. Come back when you're done. So obviously, the big thing about the season finale is, again, we all know She-Hulk in the comics breaks the fourth wall. Like that's her big gimmick, and they put that in the show. Well, in the season finale, they go beyond that, and she is walking around the Disney studios, which Genevieve and I have both been on, and we're like, oh yes, that is definitely the Marvel building. That is Disney Studios. So, they went there and they walk into the writer's room, and whether this was, again, the director, whose idea this was, but Tatiana Maslany, and I always butcher her name, she killed it. She slayed it. And she's just like, guys, Marvel took all the criticisms of the past 10 years and threw them into this episode.
Yeah. I have to say some of it, because I just watched it. We're like, I don't know, like maybe 10, 15 minutes fresh off of me just seeing it.
This was the second time I watched
it. You've seen it for the second time. I'm still digesting what I saw and how I feel about it. There were certain things that I thought were clever.
Mm-hmm.
And there were certain things that I thought was just kind of, I don't know, in bad taste. I want to address the fact that they mentioned about the CGI and mentioned about like the budgeting of the CGI, how expensive it is, and like how they can't like do so many scenes of it, when we know from friends of ours and through articles online how absolutely slammed their VFX teams are, and their artists are, and how poorly treated they are most of the time, especially with time constraints. And then they're the ones that the studio comes down on when things don't look good, when people, criticize what the TV shows look like on Twitter and, social media.
Which happened with She-Hulk from the beginning. When that first trailer dropped, that was not the final CGI, but the internet just tore it apart, and Disney instantly had to release another version saying, no, this is the updated CGI. So they understood that was a critique from the beginning. But I mean, the Marvel VFX people have been like, dudes, we're unionizing. We can't do this anymore.
I'm just saying, to make a joke about it, and it wasn't even the right joke either, because they were positing it more as a budgetary thing rather than we have a staffing issue. We have a we like an abusive workplace
we don't have
issue.
enough people and we don't pay them enough.
Right. We don't have enough people. We don't. Yeah, exactly. And they were never going to do that from the word go. But at the same time, I would rather them not say anything about it at all, because at that point, it's just like, well, that joke doesn't land for me because it's just not true. It's not true.
The majority of that whole, fourth wall scene was focusing on the story. And I think if they just kept focusing on the story and not even address the CGI, they would have been fine.
Right.
Because the story alone, and again, it wasn't just the She-Hulk story, they were addressing all the criticisms that have been leveled against Marvel movies and TV shows about how they're formulaic and they don't adhere to character development. I mean, they threw all that out there. They didn't need the CGI joke.
No, I agree. I agree with that they should have stayed more focused. I think that when writing your script and you come up with something that you think is like really funny and really great, but it doesn't serve the narrative, it's, you call it killing your darlings.
Right.
This was one of the darlings that I think needed to be, because it just seemed in poor taste to me. Maybe not to people that, don't really know anything about it.
Or if you haven't been following the industry news, because we're talking, this was like in Variety and Deadline. So if you're, or Dateline or Deadline, if you're not following the industry magazines like we do, you're probably not aware of what has been going on in the VFX community. We're very aware.
So that aside, I think it was an interesting choice. I think it's interesting that they chose to make Kevin Feige an AI robot. And it does, in one way, it kind of throws off the responsibility of, on
a human making all of these predictable storylines
on people. Well, and I guess that does touch on something else that is somewhat, I don't know, careless to do, because when you do have storylines that might read as being either problematic or stereotypical, or, especially when you're dealing with a female superhero, or you're going to deal with, race, gender, sexuality, whatever it is, if you're going to write that off as some type of algorithm, continually to write these things rather than a room full of people. They showed the room full of people
they did
at the start, but then they pretend that the person like at the very top,
they're like, oh, that's not what Kevin wants, is I think what they said.
That's not what Kevin wants. So then when you throw the responsibility to the person at the top isn't actually there. It's a CGI robot, which we all know that that's not true. The people at the top are incredibly rich, incredibly powerful, and they make all the decisions for the minority communities out there, and regardless
they are
if they're a part of it or not.
For the most part, straight white middle-aged men.
Yes.
Or older.
And so I don't know. I feel very conflicted, because the idea there is good, except the execution for me just doesn't quite make it, because it doesn't. My issues with the Marvel movies aren't that they're formulaic. It's that they get so close to saying something, and then they're never actually going to get to solving the problem, because if they actually get to solving the problem, then they themselves have to admit that the system that they created, then the people on top that are running the system actually have to make change. That they can no longer live the way that they live. They can no longer continue to grab these multi-million-dollar bonuses for themselves and then give the people working like the VFX artists nothing. Like, Disney itself just raised their park tickets. Yesterday they raised their park tickets and their Genie Plus pass. They raised Genie Plus as well on the same day without giving any notice. And do you think the park employees are going to see any of that money? Absolutely not a dime of it.
It's going to go to your shareholders and your, your executive producers and your higher ups. And
But going back to the issue of Marvel, like you have these very interesting questions that are being raised by complex villains. Like Killmonger is probably like up there as one of the villains that you're like, well, you have some real grievances.
Right. And I'm like, I can understand where you're coming from.
Just like, yeah, I get it. Like, I get it. But then they don't actually do the work to answer the problems, because if they do, that means that they have to admit that capitalism is the issue, the patriarchy is the issue, like that all of these systems that are built around the society that we live in currently are not serving us. But you know who they do serve, Lindsay, is the people at the very top that this TV show would like to claim is a AI, computer brain. And that is very disturbing to me, because it just means that in one of their quote unquote wokest shows, they're not willing to go the extra mile to actually serve.
Well, and that raises a really interesting question.
The community that they want to, or they propose that they're trying to help and they're trying to represent.
Because obviously the past 2 episodes, and especially this episode, I mean, even the whole season has been directly addressing the issue of fanboys and toxic masculinity. And especially, we saw last episode, her cell phone gets hacked. They release all these personal things, essentially, what we've seen with revenge porn and stuff like that. And then this episode, we actually have a gathering of incels. I don't know, something along those lines. They don't label it.
But the closest that I would say that it probably comes to, probably not like an insular community. I mean, like, I'm sure that they were pointing to some people that might be a part of that community that were a part of that gathering, but it definitely gave me whatchamacallit, Gamergate vibes.
Oh God, totally. And
even though they didn't really meet in person, I think they tried to a couple of times, and it just fell the fuck apart.
So it's like they're attempting to address this issue of toxic masculinity and people trying to tear down female characters, female celebrities, this whole issue of, oh, well, she was given those powers and she doesn't deserve them. They had the jab at quote unquote Lady Thor, who is not Lady Thor. She's just Thor. But then at the end, they don't hold any of those people responsible, except they do have a lawsuit against, the main guy, which we don't see. That's all done off camera. But what about all the other guys? Like, no one is held accountable for all of the hate that she's received on social media, the threats, all of that. Like, that's all just washed away.
Yeah, I was hoping for something more
explosive.
I was not even explosive. I think they also jumped back into the timeline at the wrong point. When they restarted reality, I think that they jumped ahead a little bit too far, because it felt like there was a scene missing somewhere.
They were outside because the rest of the guys were gone.
Right, the rest of the guys were gone. They went right to the arrest. And then what's his face? Hulk's enemy, the guy, Abomination. Yeah, Abomination. Like, they seem to be going somewhere with his storyline of like, hey, I can explain everything, and he doesn't get to explain anything.
Right. He's just like, oh, I did it. I'm going back to jail.
Right. And I feel like they were going somewhere with that. It just felt like they started it up too, like a little bit too like late.
Yeah.
They needed to put a pin in some of the action there.
And I would have liked to have seen, I mean, again, we don't need more glorified speeches or what have you, but I really would have liked to have seen a scene where this group of toxic masculinity is held to account. Someone is, addressing them. And, it could have been Abomination. It could have been Tim Roth's character, because he obviously did not realize what he was doing there. He was like, I'm just doing this for the money. Oh shit, I didn't know it was this type of gathering. Like, it would have been really interesting to see his character, maybe an Abomination form, maybe not, addressing this group of men and being like, whoa, guys, you obviously are projecting your insecurities on other people.
Right.
But we never had that.
Because he's a mental health guru.
Right,
so,
exactly.
It would have that actually.
And he does try to protect Jen when the fighting breaks out. So I was like, I would have kind of liked to see that whole,
that's actually
like,
a really
group,
good,
a group setting where all these guys have to then come out with all of their daddy issues, as we established with the scene with Kevin. Apparently everyone has daddy issues in the Marvel universe.
I have to agree with you there. And I think maybe the reason why they didn't do something like that is because they didn't want Abomination to seem like, he's white knighting, and which is exactly what, what fanboys would be saying online anyway, if that's what happened. And then, you're going to have feminist groups as well saying the exact same thing of like, why does Abomination solve the issues
why couldn't
reach why couldn't it be, Jen? And it's like, guys, sometimes you just need an ally to reach the people who you cannot reach yourself. Like, there is no way that she would have been able to say anything of impact that would change
they wouldn't have listened.
That group's mind. However, if somebody like Abomination, who is kind of, you look at him, he's big, he's strong, like is kind of, emblematic of masculinity. I mean, these people were worshiping him basically. If you had somebody like that, a very masculine figure, kind of laying it out and, talking them off the ledge, so to speak, or, like talking the pitchforks out of their hands, maybe it would have served, served the narrative better. But no, it's just Jen. And also, I don't think Jen really was able to learn in like a character lesson, like an overarching like she was so close.
Well, they have the line of her on the steps walking into the courthouse, and she's like, everyone deserves, I'm coming after you. And he's like, as She-Hulk or as a lawyer? And she's like, both. And I was like, okay, I guess that's your I've come to terms with the both sides of me moment, but it was just very fleeting.
It's very fleeting. It didn't hit well. It wasn't impactful enough for me to where it didn't feel like it, because she argued that she wanted that to be the lesson of like that she wanted that to be the theme and the lesson of her own TV show. However, we don't get that moment. And I was wondering where it was.
Yeah.
I was like, you wanted this to end your way and say, speak to the lesson that you want to have it say. And yet you're not going to do it. Like, you're not going to give it to us. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to come up with some, like, it would have been better if they X, Y, or Z.
We're not the writers, but yeah.
But at the same time, I have eyes, I have ears. I watched the show.
Right.
And I didn't see any moment where she actually was like, you know what? I am She-Hulk. This is who I'm. And if you're going to do it, like, and I don't care if she was like getting there or like pretty much there in the last episode or the second to the last episode. This is the finale.
Right.
You need to put a button on it, tie the bow on it in the finale. Like, do not tell me that, and especially if she's going to tear open the very fabric of the reality that she's living in to have it end her way, that you're also just going to oddly forget to put in the moral or the like the final transformation of her character, the final lesson that she learns.
Yeah, because we get that kind of brief final moment as she's walking up the steps, but the last real scene that we have is the backyard barbecue.
Yeah.
Which kind of gets interrupted by Hulk. And you're like, oh, well, we just set up the next Hulk movie or the next Avengers movie with his son. And it's like, okay, cool. We've got this cute little Daredevil moment. Are they a thing? Are they not a thing? Is he moving to LA? We don't know. So it was kind of cute to see, the personal side of things and see where that's going to go. But they could have used that kind of, I'll call it filler content to address this, because obviously she got rehired back at her firm. Like, where's the story there? You know, they terminated her with no issues whatsoever.
Right. I think, and she didn't get in trouble at all for ripping off her inhibitor either.
No.
And yeah.
Oh no, when she rewinded, she didn't have the inhibitor anymore. Did she? Did she rip it off? I don't know. We never even addressed that.
She ripped it off.
She did rip it off. Okay,
she ripped it off once that she figured out that like the whole lodge was basically like her hate mob.
Yeah.
And
all of Reddit is in this lodge.
And then after that, she burst through the TV.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so no consequences for that. But like the backyard barbecue scene for me is a good wind down moment where if there was to be like a lesson or a poignant moment or something where they're like, this is the purpose of the show, it would have been before that.
Yes.
And then you would have your wind down moment in the backyard.
And then you're like, oh, where is Jen Walters and Matt Murdock going? And that's what you're thinking about.
Right. And like, oh,
who the hell is what Hulk's son? And he's in the comics. Yes, we get that. But it's like, did we need it? Really? That was a post-credit scene. That was not that should not, I don't know. I think
it's fine because I think it's fine because that's a callback to her saying like, no, we don't need him in this moment.
Exactly. It's like, really? He's going to come save the day?
And then it's just like, no, he could come in at the end, and just like give his little bloop
bombshell.
Right. Because I mean, that's more of a callback and a joke to her like writing him out of the script until like the very, very end. But yeah, I don't know. I
don't know.
I feel that this show in particular had some good ups and it had some very some big oofs for me, especially at the end where I saw where they were going. This is the thing, is that it is actually quite disappointing because I saw where it was going.
Right.
And I was interested to see what they would do when addressing all of these very current issues that, not even just women, but people are facing online, and to see what they would do with it. And it turns out that once again, Marvel decides that they don't need to hold themselves accountable for the system that they continue to perpetuate, because if they did, that would mean that they would have to dismantle the system that they are profiting off of.
Right.
And
it's like they started to open the door and then they closed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and who knows where. Obviously it seems like we're getting a season 2. They threw all the little indicators out that we're getting a season 2. Maybe they're setting us up for something, we don't know. But the other thing is with all of the cameos that we got, they were all male Marvel characters. I personally would have been and again, take it for what you will. But if we are having a show that is supposed to be about female empowerment and addressing these issues of the patriarchy, I would have loved to seen her have a conversation with Carol Danvers, or if we could have even gotten a Jessica Drew or a Jessica Jones and just be like, yo, man, fucking men. That would have been really fun for me to see, like, her just chill with another female superhero.
A Jessica Jones tie-in would actually be like
really and
appropriate.
Again, we don't know if we're getting a Jessica Jones. Obviously, we've got Charlie Cox is back as Daredevil, but now we know that Kristen Ritter is filming the Orphan Black prequel or spinoff, which ironically Tatiana Maslany, was Orphan Black, so we've got a little crossover there. But that would have been a really interesting.
Right.
It's like, oh, you slept with Matt Murdock? So did I. How'd that go for you? No.
Right. And
sharing a bottle. Neither of them can get drunk. So
now that I would like to circle back to the idea that, to actually address these things and have a serious conversation about hate mongering online, about anti-feminism, about people just hate mobbing things. I personally don't think that it is profitable for Disney to get rid of these people either, if we're being honest, because they also are relying on the hate watches, the YouTube channels that are going to, just tear She-Hulk a new one and tear, Thor: Love and Thunder a new one. And I mean, like, I know plenty of people who do just that that are getting a whole bunch of reactions and comments and likes, or upvotes and or downvotes on what they've been saying, but it still is in the hundreds to the thousands, even on people who are not necessarily that popular, but people who are watched get like hundreds of thousands of people to view these things. And that alone is advertisement for the Disney company.
Oh, absolutely.
And it doesn't matter what type of press they're getting. And sometimes the vitriol, like the more violent, the more like toxic it is, the better it is for them, because it causes a stir, and one way or another they're going to get both sides involved. Like if the conservatives flip their shit, then the liberals are going to latch onto it and be like, we gotta watch this. And it's also vice versa. It works exactly the same in the other direction. It's that once one side gets involved very heavily, the other side will also get involved extremely heavily, because you're going to have people doing reaction videos to the reaction videos. And then now, I mean, I've seen it. I don't want to call anybody on YouTube out for it, but like I've seen a lot of people that I follow who they will take the reaction videos to the reaction video and make another reaction video out of it, and then it just turns into this huge cycle of a pissing contest of like he said, she said, and taking things out of context or willfully misunderstanding what is being said. And like, you do want to, the instinct is to defend yourself against trolls. That's the instinct, or people who are unfairly not even criticizing, but just throwing vitriol at you, because at that point it's not criticism. At that point it's just, abuse. But then at the same time, it's like, you gotta know when to stop feeding the troll.
Well, and that's, that raises a really interesting point, is we obviously live in a world where social media dominates everything now. It's all about views and subscriber numbers. I mean, and influencers are starring in movies now and everything. And it's like, can we make a movie where we just don't care about the audience's reaction anymore? Like, what would have She-Hulk looked like if we were able to make it pre-social media? I don't know. There is no answer for that anymore. And it's like, with the amount of money the Disney Corporation has right now, they could afford to put a show out where they just don't care what people think, but they just don't seem willing to take that risk.
That's the thing, is that Disney, for me, is actually quite far behind in the progressive sense. You've had a lot of studios, you've had a lot of TV shows, or TV channels rather, and streaming networks taking risks, doing doing the work, the legwork that a lot of communities expect them to do. I mean, granted, it's baby steps, of course, but I mean, they're still progressing in minority visibility, in having female representation, elderly representation. And I mean, like, I want to point to, the Sandman, and, say what you want about Rings of Power, but Rings of Power, finally, House of the Dragon, or the Game of Thrones people. I'm going to say the Game of Thrones people, because House of the Dragon is its own thing, but I mean, it's still the same,
Well, and we've had Wheel of Time, which also came out through Amazon, which gave us a broad age range. It gave us women. Exactly.
So these people are doing the legwork. And Disney just seems to want to have their cake and eat it too, where they are trying to basically appeal to both sides without ever taking a definitive stance on anything until the public outrage, the majority of the public outrage is such a large majority that they will take their side in things. However, we know that they have been, giving money to interest groups that are anti-LGBT.
Oh yeah. Well, and we saw this issue in Florida where Disney was not willing to take a stance originally with the quote unquote "don't say gay" bill. And it took public outrage before Disney had to finally, Disney Orlando had to say something about, and it was something, I don't know, it was something like, we don't support this, blah, 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 blah. We'll let our employees wear rainbow flags or something.
But but like they only said something about it because the bill passed.
Yeah.
So it was too little too late. Right. It really didn't matter what they said at that point. It was too little too late, and they had already been discovered giving money to special interest groups that are anti-LGBTQ.
Yeah.
And so they've also given money to, LGBTQ friendly and positive interest groups as well. Right. But that's just them playing both sides.
Politics.
That's Disney politics. That's corporation politics for you. So they've been playing both sides this whole time, thinking that people aren't noticing, thinking that we don't see them, and that we'll give them, their money anyway. Because what is it? They own like how much of the film industry now? Like,
I mean, between Fox and
ABC
and Nat Geo now and ABC, and it's the majority. I feel like it's the majority. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have a monopoly.
Marvel, Pixar, all of those. Yeah.
Lucasfilms.
Yep.
They have a monopoly. The Muppets of all things, which I was talking to somebody
Studios,
just the other day, how they should not have the Muppets. They don't know how to. They don't know that IP at all. They don't know what to do with that IP at all. But regardless, it's Disney is behind in the times, and people are starting to notice on both sides, both conservatives and liberals. People who are in minority groups, people who are not, are noticing the fact that they are not taking a side, and that they're being very wishy-washy about all of their decisions that they are making, and nobody's happy.
Yeah, exactly.
So at that point, but Disney also doesn't understand, I feel, that if they did take the majority, side, which I think skews more liberal, they would be fine.
I feel like they would be okay. I feel like they've got enough money, they've got influence and outreach that people are still going to go to their theme parks and still going to watch their shows.
Absolutely. So I don't know. She-Hulk for me, it started off in a very interesting place where I wanted to see where it was going to go, and they were dealing with some very even though it's a comedy, they were dealing with some very heavy and poignant topics that are very relevant to us today, especially, the social media stuff. And at the very end, they
started to go there, and then they
disappointed.
They pulled it back.
Yeah. So overall, it's not a bad show.
No, it's not a bad show. I still enjoyed it, but I really wish they had just gone. They'd just gone for it.
If they'd gone full tilt, it's not a bad show, but I wouldn't praise it very hard either. No. The people that worked on it did a good job, and I don't know. I guess, what would you rate it?
I mean, it's always hard with ratings, because it's like, I'll say all the actors did a fantastic job. We have nothing against the performers. They did a fantastic job. It all comes back to the studio decisions. I mean, what are we comparing it to? Like Book of Boba Fett versus
I mean, I guess
anything
the
else?
other Marvel TV shows. I mean,
because I feel like all the like Loki was good, but then again, Loki had its drawbacks, and
right.
WandaVision had its. I mean, all of them had.
I don't know.
Potential.
I'd give it a 5 out of 10 personally.
5 or 6 out of 10. Yeah.
Loki stands for me at like a 7 out of 10, I guess.
Yeah.
So like.
Yeah, I think it's definitely below Loki, but above some of the other ones. Yeah.
Right.
I can go with that. So those are our thoughts. Let us know what you think in the comments. As you can see, you can't please us. We're very hard to please. But that being said, if you do want to see something that totally pleased me, go watch The Woman King. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to tell this to everybody. This has nothing to do with She-Hulk. Just go watch The Woman King. It's the best movie ever. And it's females and it's women and it's women of color and it's everything I want in entertainment. But She-Hulk, 6 out of 10. There we go.
Okay. All right. So this, oh my God, we get to do it in the same room. We're going to do it. Oh my God. Okay. So maybe we can actually time it. All right.
Okay.
This is the rollout. We will geek with you next week.